everyone, welcome back to the Empty Pantry, where we take tight budgets and make them into delicious meals. In today's episode, we're going to talk about using up a kitchen staple, rice. If you're like me, you often have leftover rice from the night before, and I'm always looking for ways to use it up. I hate to throw anything out. So today, I'm going to share with you a few recipes to use up that leftover rice so you don't have to throw it out. Today, I'll show you how to make some bacon and egg stir-fried rice, as well as some Mexican rice with some options to make it a full meal. And then we'll finish off with some sweet rice pudding. These recipes are great for transforming that leftover rice into something brand new that's frugal and delicious. So go grab that container of leftover rice and let's get cooking.
First thing we're going to make is some stir-fried rice. This is one of my favorite things to make with leftover rice because it makes a full meal. It's very fast and everyone in the family really likes it. So we're going to start with dicing up some vegetables. What we're looking for is 1 cup of diced veggies. So it doesn't really matter what you want to dice up. I used some carrots, bell pepper, and onion to get my 1 cup of diced vegetables. You could totally use frozen mixed vegetables too if you like that. So whatever you choose to do, just dice them up in fairly small pieces, especially vegetables that are hard like carrots. You want to make sure that they're small so that they cook fairly fast. Because the rice is already cooked, this is not a meal that takes a ton of time. So make sure those are small enough that they're going to cook, fairly quickly. We're also going to slice up some green onions. You're going to want the white and the green. So we're just going to slice those up, get them nice and smaller pieces, not large pieces. And then we're also going to prepare 2 cloves of garlic by peeling it and then mincing it nice and small. So now we have all of our vegetables prepared. This is a meal that goes really fast, so it is important to get all of these things ready ahead of time. Now that we've prepared all of our vegetables, we're going to move over to the stove with a large frying pan. I recommend as large as you have because you do want room to move the rice around. So I started with putting 4 slices of bacon that I have chopped up into my pan. And then I'm going to just continue to cook that until it's nice and crispy. Once it's crispy, we're going to remove it from the pan, but leave the grease in the pan because we're actually going to use that to cook with. Now, if you had a crazy amount of grease in there, then do take some out. You can kind of see how much I had left in the pan. That was probably like 1 or 2 tablespoons worth of grease. That's a good amount for the amount of rice we're going to make. So if you had extra grease, feel free to take some of it out so you just have a little bit left in there. So now that we have the bacon out of the pan and we still have our hot grease, the pan is still on, we're going to start cooking up those vegetables. Now, the amount of time this takes depends on what you're cooking. If they're frozen, they're going to be fairly quick because they've already been softened a bit. I had some carrots in here, so it did take a few minutes for these to soften up. Once they are cooked, you can see they're a little bit brown. They're nice and soft. There's still a texture to the carrots. They're not mush. They're still holding their form. But they're soft. They're not going to be crunchy when we bite into them. So now that our vegetables are done, we are going to move to adding our main ingredient, which is our 2 cups of leftover rice. And then we're going to go ahead and put our bacon back in there. And we're just going to cook this a little bit. We're just trying to get that rice nice and warm. And then we want it kind of coated with the vegetables and stuff before we move on to our seasonings. I'm just breaking up the rice so it's not big globs. You can do this before or after you add the next ingredients. It's kind of up to you, but I was just kind of chopping that up. Now we're going to add that flavor. So we're going to add 2 tablespoons of soy sauce and then 1 tablespoon of sesame oil. That sesame oil has a great flavor. It's a very Asian flavor, very distinctive. Definitely tastes different than normal regular vegetable oil. So if you have sesame oil, you want to use that opposed to another type of oil. So I'm going to continue to cook this. I'm just stirring this around, making sure that all of my rice is coated in the soy sauce and it's going to be nice and brown. Once I do have that coated, I'm going to throw in my green onions. Now, I should mention I didn't throw them in earlier because I didn't want them completely cooked down and to lose their color all the way. So I waited until now to put those green onions in and then just give it a nice good stir. Once those onions are added, once all the rice is nice and brown with the soy sauce and I've stirred it around and those onions have just cooked just a tad bit, I'm going to make a little nest in the middle of my rice so the middle of my fry pan is open. This is going to be for my egg that I'm going to put in here. So I've taken one egg and I put it in a cup and I just gently mixed it up just a little bit so the yolk wasn't whole. Now, just a word of caution. You do want to definitely do this with the open fry pan, and you're going to scramble the egg in that middle of the fry pan. Try not to mix the rice in it too much at this point. You want it to be all the way cooked before folding it into the rice. I have made the mistake of just kind of throwing the egg on the top. It kind of just coats the rice and it just kind of makes the whole thing look kind of, I don't know, milky or something like that. You don't get any big pieces of egg or, I don't know, it just looks wrong. It just is different. So you want to cook the egg completely in the middle of the pan, chopping it into small little bits, and then gently fold it into the rest of the rice. That'll give you the look you're going for as far as an egg fried rice. So that's what I'm doing, just chopping it up, making it nice and small, and then I'll mix that into my rice very gently. And that's the type of egg that you want in your stir-fried rice. Now that all the ingredients are in there, we are ready to serve this up. Everything is already cooked. So just serve it like this. This makes a full meal. I mean, you have your protein in there, you have some vegetables and some carbs. So it is a nice full meal, or you can serve it, on the side with something else. But there you have the bacon and egg stir-fried rice. Okay, let's go for a different type of stir-fried rice. Let's make some Mexican rice. So we're going to start by chopping some vegetables. I'm going to have a whole bell pepper. You can do whatever color you want. You just want the equivalent of one bell pepper. You could do a combination too if you like, or if you had frozen ones, that's the combination, you could do that as well. So we're just going to chop that up into small pieces similar to the stir-fried rice. And then we're also going to dice up the equivalent of half a large onion or one small onion. I'm using a white onion. You could use whatever kind of onion you like. A sweet onion would be really good as well. So just chop those up into small bits. And then we're also going to prepare 2 cloves of garlic that we are going to peel, and then we're going to dice those into really small little tiny pieces. Now that all of our vegetables are chopped up and ready to go, we're going to move over to the stove and we're going to get that large fry pan out again. And we're going to put a couple tablespoons, 1 to 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil in it. I am using a nonstick pan, so I'm not using as much. If you were using some other type of pan, you may want to put more oil in there so things aren't getting stuck to the bottom. Now I got the oil a little bit hot before I started adding my vegetables. So those peppers and onions that we just chopped up, I'm just throwing those into the pan. We're going to start to saute these so they start getting a little bit soft, very similar to the last recipe that we did. Once those have softened a little bit, it's time for the garlic. We don't add the garlic prior because we don't want to burn it. It tends to get a little bit bitter if it's cooked too much. So we're just going to throw the garlic in there after those have cooked a little tiny bit. Now, what would Mexican rice be without some rotel? So some diced up tomatoes with chilies in them. You can just use stewed diced tomatoes if you don't have the rotel. They're very good though. And they have those little chilies in them, so it adds a little bit of extra flavor and just a tad bit of heat. So those are in there. The pan is nice and hot, as you can see. Then we're going to add in our seasoning. So 1 teaspoon of chili powder, and then we're going to add in 1 teaspoon of cumin and half a teaspoon-ish of some smoked paprika or regular paprika if you like, and then just salt and pepper to taste. Not very much, just a little bit. You can always season it later if you need, especially salt. Just go light on the salt until the end when you're tasting it with the rice. I let everything cook for just a minute, kind of get some of that seasoning into my vegetables. And now I'm adding my star ingredient, that rice. That's 2 cups of cooked rice that I had in the fridge. So at this point, that is all of our ingredients. From here on out, we just want to get the rice thoroughly warmed up. We want to make sure that all the big chunks of rice are broken up and everything has a nice, good coating of the vegetables and seasoning, and we'll be ready to serve. Now, if you wanted to make this a meal, some ground hamburger in here with a little bit of cheese on top makes it a meal. So that would be another option if you want to make a full meal with this dish. So there you have the Mexican rice using up that leftover rice. So we've made 2 savory dishes with our leftover rice. Let's move on to something sweet. Let's make some rice pudding. Kind of an old-fashioned thing, but it is really, really yummy. So we're going to start with a pot on the stove. We're going to add in 2 cups of cooked rice, followed by 2 cups of milk. And you can use any type of milk you want. If you use like a half and half, it's going to be creamier, but you can use coconut milk and almond milk, whatever kind of milk you like, you can use, it'll work in this recipe. And then to the milk, we're going to add half a cup of sugar and 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And then an optional ingredient would be about half a teaspoon of cinnamon. You don't have to use the cinnamon, but I did in this time when I was making it. And a pinch of salt. Those are all of our ingredients. So we're just going to give it a nice stir, and we're going to cook this over medium heat for 15 to 20 minutes. We're looking for it to thicken up a little bit. It becomes a little bit more gelatinous. The starch from the rice and the milk make it more like a pudding consistency. So that's what we're looking for. While it's hot, it's going to be a little bit more runny. That's okay. As it cools, it is going to thicken. So don't look for it to be super thick when it's still hot. And once it's done, you let it sit for a little bit and then you serve it up. You can top it with a little bit of cinnamon. That is really good. Or you can just eat it this way if you don't want any cinnamon on it. So there we have our rice pudding recipe.
Thank you for watching and being part of the Empty Pantry community. I can't wait to see you next week when I have more delicious recipes to share with you. So until then, use up that leftover rice. Happy cooking. Bye.